we got a big crew here. This is awesome to see. I think our first meeting was three of us, so this is super cool. Big shout out to Sam for bringing in some new faces, and um, try to keep this around 45. Sometimes we'll extend out to an hour, but if you got to jump off, just hop off the call, and I'll send out the recording afterwards. Um, a little outline on agenda. I'd love to just go around and get 30 seconds from everybody, just because we got new faces, and I can't remember where everyone's from, so it'd be good to get some context. After we do that, I'm going to hand off the mic to Ryan and Devin, and they're just going to talk a little bit more about their practice in depth, kind of the story of StatonWalsh, and then specifically, they got a really cool sector that they focus on in the construction world. So I'm curious to hear how that strategy developed and how they service those clients. And then our primary discussion topic is converting participants into private wealth clients. So I'm sure we got a wide variety of different models, whether you have an RIA attached to you or you refer it out. But that'll be just kind of open roundtable discussion on how you do it, how you want to do it, positives and negatives. So let me kick it off real quick, and we'll just kind of popcorn people here. But my name is Luke Burton. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I got circled up with this whole group through NAPA, the conference that was in San Diego last year. It's in Nashville this year. Super cool conference, but I noticed there were a lot of big firms there. Everybody was kind of in their groups, and I'm basically a solo practitioner. So I just tried to find other dudes that were sitting alone that looked lonely. And so that's kind of how this group was born, was folks that are either operating in a small firm or operating independently that just need some feedback, need some help with how they're running things. And then just brief overview on my practice. So very small, started 2 years ago. We've got 8 clients, about 70 million under management in 401k plans. And big focus for us is blue collar businesses around Atlanta. So manufacturing, construction. I'm an educator at heart, so I try to find populations that really need education, and then management teams that want me to go out on job sites, wear a hard hat, and mix and mingle with the good old boys. So that's it on me. I'm going to popcorn over. I'm going to actually pause for Devin and Ryan. Y'all hold tight on the intros because I want to give y'all kind of the floor more extended. But Patrick, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, nice to meet everybody. I'm Patrick McKay. I am an advisor in New Orleans, Louisiana. I work at a firm called Stokes Family Office. We're a standalone independent RIA based here in New Orleans. We have just coming up on about 50 retirement plan clients. So I'm a CFP, but most of the business I actually do, most of the work I do is on our retirement plan side. I kind of manage the retirement plan book of business. I think we're closing in on about 400 million under management there. And yeah, I do a lot of employee and participant education. I like the topic today because a lot of what I do is trying to meet new people and converting some of those new people through the kind of 401k plan education into private wealth clients. So excited to be here, like mixing and mingling with other young advisors in the same boat as me. So nice to meet everybody.
I'll just go ahead here because I got to hop off in a couple of minutes. So yeah, I was one of those lonely guys at that Napa conference. Luke came down and sat by me. So it's nice meeting you guys all virtually. My name is Brennan McCain. I'm live in Marietta, Ohio. Part of an RIA firm, independent firm of Raymond James. Kind of got started with our personal money management. Is been around for a while. It's been growing a ton. Recently, this past year, we went over $1 billion in AUM on the personal side. Never really did 401ks, and we kind of focus. And a large number of our clients are in the franchisee space. We kind of have agreements with different franchisees to sponsor 401k benefits for them. We utilize a MEAP, the Multiple Employer Aggregation Program, a lot. So we had never really done 401ks before I was hired a year and a half ago. In full disclosure, I was coaching college basketball before I came over here to do 401ks. So it's been kind of thrown into the fire, learn as you go. We've went from about 12, 13 plans when I got here. We're now at 44 plans. So crazy growth. Hope we're doing it right, but these things are really beneficial for me because, I can kind of take practices I learned here and use them on my own. So again, good to meet you all and, look forward to hearing from you.
I can go next. I also was one of those lonely guys sitting at the table at Napa. But my name's Sam. We're located in West Michigan, so Grand Rapids area, if you guys are familiar. Primarily an employee benefits and commercial insurance shop. And we actually just had our third guy get hired today and have his first day. That's going to be focused on more of the employee education and one-on-one meetings of our practice, so like doing presentations and on-site stuff. We have about 100 plans and about 350 million in assets, so we needed another person to kind of service those our current clients to the necessity that they should be serviced on the on-site aspect of things. But we're excited about the future. We went from about like 40 plans when I started 4 years ago to nearly 100. So we're primarily in the 2 to 10 space, have a couple over 20, but obviously all sorts of things will help anybody out. So
I'll jump off. My name is Jim Fitzgibbon. I'm here I'm in a team at Raymond James in Chicago, Illinois. I was also another lonely person at Napa since I went there solo and no one else from my team went there. I'm similar to Patrick, is that I'm a CFP, but I focus primarily on the retirement plan space. Most of our plans are between 1 to 10 million, a couple outliers above 20. But about 30 plans, 75 million in asset. And then we're merging with another team at Raymond James right now, and they have another, I think, 40 plans above a couple 100 million in assets. So been big learning curve getting their processes on, and obviously wanted to join this group. It's another young advisors and not go to conferences and see most people above 55 plus years old. So it's nice to see a lot of younger faces.
Nate, you want to hop in?
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't at Napa this past year, but I probably would have fit the bill of lonely and by myself there. Nate Moody, I'm an advisor and partner at a firm called LaBelle and Harriman up in Portland, Maine. We've been around since 1978, really focusing on retirement plans ever since. We have a book of close to 225 retirement plans, a little over 4 billion in assets. Always joke we punch pretty far above our weight class. I'll kick our coverage up here in little old Maine. But we've just been the beneficiary of making it a core focus and doing it for a long time. We kind of run the gambit. I have a plan that has $4,000 in assets. I have a plan that has 400 million. So we don't get too picky up here in Maine. So yeah, that's, I guess, a little bit about us. Thank you for extending the invite. I think I got connected through RPAG and Matt Giovanoza there, who's a great guy, but really looking forward to be able to sort of share some best practices. I feel like some of the things people talk about at the Napa are so out of touch with what I actually experience in terms of like day to day of meeting with clients and meeting with participants. So I'm excited to sort of see some of your guys' perspectives.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Mason, you got anything for us?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. I'm from Chico, California. If you know Aaron Rodgers, that's where he grew up and came about his early football days. I got into the business in 2017 and have literally started day one specializing in corporate nonprofit retirement plans. So I'm kind of the opposite, where some of you start out wealth and move to 401k plans. I literally have just done 401k plans from the start. So that's kind of what I've been bred into and all I know. So if you ask me any wealth questions, I have no idea. But I was one of those people down in Napa too. I'm going to get to meet and you be down in Napa. But in 2022, our independent RIA firm was acquired by Hub International. So I'm part of a bigger firm, but more specifically, just myself, I work on about 180 plans and about 250 million in assets. Back when I got into it, Cal Savers mandate started going out. So it's really easy for me to collect a lot of plans with no assets. So I'm one of those people with a lot of plans with no money in them, but started growing my book and getting those bigger ones later in life. But really excited to be a part of this and hearing more, what you guys do, just because being a part of a firm that specializes in insurance, sometimes the conversation isn't about retirement. So excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Devin and Ryan, do y'all want to go ahead and launch here and just give us the full rundown of firm history and then tell us where you are today?
Yeah, appreciate it. Ryan, I'll turn it over to you to kind of give those details.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for putting this together. So my name is Ryan Staton, and Devin and I have been business partners. So we started StatonWalsh in November of 2019, officially. Been in the business for, I guess, a dozen years at this point, 12, 13 years. Actually both of us started on the private wealth, private client side. Most of my career I spent working with business owners going through transitions, so exit succession planning primarily. Never really did much in the retirement planning space. Work in a niche, which we'll talk about here in a second, but worked with a lot of business owners in some niche industries. And I basically, out of necessity, got asked the question enough about retirement plans. We were doing a lot of consulting, a lot of work at the executive level, and they said, hey, can you guys take over, your financial advisors, take over this retirement plan? And for a long time, we did not. But through some additional education, just kind of bringing ourselves up to speed on a few things, we have grown it now to, in the last, I guess, let's call it 24 months or so is where we really hit our stride. We've gone from $5 million in retirement plan asset firm to 52 million. We'll be probably at about 60 by the end of this year with some conversions that we're working on right now. So it's still a growing business for us. And we're still learning new stuff every day. So it's nice to get into a group like this and kind of get different perspectives and hear from people that have been doing it for a really long time, and then others that have made transitions like we have. And we were also out at Napa in San Diego, but I guess I didn't look lonely enough, so Luke didn't sit next to me. But we got introduced to the group by Bill Chetney and the guys at Viking Cove, and we were recently kind of invited to be a part of that group. So super excited about it, really excited about the topic today. Obviously, it's something that has been a big value driver for our business in terms of growth. I don't know if you guys, if you want me to jump right into it, I'm happy to do a quick intro, but that's pretty much a little bit about us. Yeah.
Talk to us about your construction specific entity. I know y'all spun something out to kind of focus on that sector. What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have essentially it's a marketing name, but we have another entity set up called Construction 401k. So in the construction space, and specifically in the area that we're in Baltimore, Maryland. We're close proximity to Washington, D.C. There are a lot of contractors that do government, public sector work, basically. And so there's a couple pieces of legislation that govern those contracts, specifically Davis-Bacon and then Service Contract Act. There are some elements of that legislation that require workers on those job sites to get paid a certain way. And so we were working with a lot of those contractors in different capacities. And in the retirement planning space, we've really picked up steam with taking that niche market and some of the elements of those contracts and how to use prevailing wage dollars within a 401k plan. There are some unique things that you can do. I would say it's not unique in terms of the legislation has been around forever. And it's been possible for a very long time, but there are not a lot of retirement plan advisors or institutions that are well versed in this to the point where they provide value for these clients. And so Construction 401k was really born out of Since this is a recording meeting, I'll protect the innocent here, but there's a couple national firms that market themselves as specialists in this space specifically. And they do a good job in some aspects, but in a lot of others, they are not great when we talk about, looking at fees from the fiduciary capacity and making plans as efficient as possible, educating participants, like all the things that we hear at these conferences and this big push for financial wellness in the marketplace today. They are a product provider and that's it. And so we really felt like there was a need, especially in the blue collar space, to combine product with financial wellness, with education, and give a more comprehensive solution. And so Construction 401k in and of itself is not necessarily a product. It's a company that will go to market in an objective fiduciary capacity and find the best partnerships for a particular company that's implementing prevailing wage dollars in a retirement plan. So we're record keeper agnostic, we're TPA agnostic. We approach things just like we would with any other retirement plan that we work with, but just had to spend a little bit more time talking about that kind of specialized corner of the market with how to utilize those dollars.
Ryan, who are some of the vendors that y'all prefer to work with in that world?
Yeah, so there's a few. I will say that most that are very, very good from a record keeping perspective, prevailing wage dollars, I believe should be possible everywhere. Unfortunately, that's not the case. There are some that are still either not comfortable taking on that business, or I typically find that ones that are going to be your more bundled, more frequently bundled providers typically don't do well in that space because they're not good on the administration side with it. Insurance-based record keepers still kind of dominate. We see a lot of the John Hancock, Transamerica, Nationwides of the world seem to be the bigger players. Non-asset-based record keepers like T. Rowe Price, which is a local company here to us in Maryland, they do a pretty good job with it. We do quite a bit of business there as well. Others are opening up to the idea, and so we've really made a push to get more record keepers comfortable with it, because obviously we all know that competition is good, especially in a fee conversation. So those are I'd say the big three that we see most frequently. Transamerica and Nationwide serve some of those national companies that I mentioned behind the scenes as well. So they have a pretty big presence in that space. We do quite a bit of business with John Hancock on that side as well. And we're constantly trying to develop new relationships there to get more up to speed. But the Vanguards of the world, or some of the others that we've had experience with outside of these plans, haven't been our first choice, or haven't been places where we're going frequently for these types of plans. So it's a relatively small space in that sense, in terms of like record keeping relationships, but we still have enough. We have about a handful that we can go to for price competitiveness, or if we need to make a push on fees, we usually can have a little bit of success there.
Are you working with local TPAs or national TPAs?
Mostly national. We have a couple local that we tried in the beginning, and they were, I'll say, adequate, but not great. What we've developed over time is some relationships with folks through some national associations we belong to that have the same target as us, and so they were more regional in nature, but we've kind of grown this into a national brand collectively. So Associated Builders and Contractors is a national organization that we belong to. We participate in their national conference every year, and have become kind of a partner with them on a local and a national level through Construction 401k specifically. We've made some relationships there. So there's one TRG Fiduciary Consultants, so Touchstone Retirement Group. They actually have an executive there based out of Buffalo, New York, but they have an executive team that's down in the Austin, Texas area, one of which used to work for one of the national firms that I mentioned. And so he's pretty well versed in that space. They do a fantastic job. They also do some other fiduciary work like 402A, for example, where we can leverage them in a couple different ways within a plan, which is helpful. Outside of prevailing wage, we work with plan design consultants a lot. It's another TPA that we've grown to be good friends with, and they've done a fantastic job for helping us grow our practice. Those are the two that we primarily use in any plan. We have interviewed and are interviewing others. So for example, like ABC, Associated Builders and Contractors, has a national net plan now as well, and they use a third-party administrator that we're working with now to figure out if we're going to utilize them moving forward. It's a guy, his name's Larry Crocker. He's based out of Tennessee somewhere, and I think the name of his company is Fiduciary. It's very vanilla. It's like Fiduciary Consulting or something like that, but very clear what he does. But yeah, it's not a large field. I will say, like, there are some people like, so PDC, for example, those guys are great. They do an awesome job. They are not one that have been comfortable with the idea of having, doing administration on prevailing wage plans. So like, even companies that have been doing this forever are not eager to jump into the pool with us on this. So it is a challenge to find that. And we've had good fortune that we have, one, occasionally another that we can use, but it is, there are many people that will tell you they know how to do it, but we discover trial by fire. Like, there were a lot of people that didn't really understand it the way that we thought they did. So we've, out of necessity, kind of reduced that list of people that we're willing to work with on these types of plans as well.
Ryan, would you mind giving us, or Devin, either one of you guys, just give us the elevator pitch? Assume that we're a crowd of non-financially literate construction guys. Like, in 60 seconds, why should we consider prevailing wage, and what do you guys bring to the table?
Yeah, so I think the biggest value so in a prevailing wage scenario, the contract dictates that you have to pay a base rate, and then there's a fringe component, and that fringe can be used for benefits for your employees, and that's a number of different things: health insurance, retirement plan contributions, and other, I'll generally say other category. One of the biggest benefits to the owner of a company and to the company itself is ultimately going to be cost savings. So how does that work? If you pay a fringe contribution in cash, most business owners like yourselves understand that every dollar that runs through payroll has a cost associated with it. You have to pay payroll tax, unemployment, workers' compensation. It all factors into that mix. And so every additional dollar in payroll has a 25 cents on the dollar cost associated with it. And so how we utilize prevailing wage within the plan is we can take that fringe, which you are allowed to by law, and divert into a retirement plan and basically save your business 25 cents on every dollar associated with that hourly wage. That is the biggest benefit. Secondarily, if you're having a hard time getting participation in your plan and you find yourself as an owner getting corrective distributions a lot, we can leverage and utilize that prevailing wage fringe dollar to help open up additional opportunity for contribution for the ownership and executive team. It's totally allowed. You can do it. There's no issues with it. The law is very clear on that. It's just making sure that you build your plan accordingly to ensure that every dollar that goes in is properly accounted for, so that you can either utilize the plan in a greater capacity or you can reduce your bottom line. Why does that matter? Ultimately, as a business, the more profitability that you can squeeze out of those jobs makes you more competitive on the next bid. So especially in a government job scenario, when you're bidding on public sector work, you have to be competitive. So how do we do that? We have to find margin in every job, all the way down to the hourly wage that you're paying the employee. So every 25 cents that you get to keep on not paying that on a payroll is now found money that you can use to either bid a job more competitively or use that profit for other reinvestment in your company.
Awesome.
Ryan, I'm curious, I'm not as familiar with Davis-Bacon whatsoever, but how are those contributions tested, if at all? Does it cause any non-discrimination test issues? Are you setting up sort of a parallel plan where only these prevailing wages are going into? Can you kind of walk me through that?
Yeah, so there are two schools of thought. What we typically see is that we'll see a traditional plan, and then they'll run a prevailing wage plan parallel to that. The challenge that you get with these plans is that, one, not every company is doing public sector work all the time. So that's one challenge. Two, you end up getting, you have two plans with a high number of participants potentially. So we see it a lot where it's like 200 in the traditional plan, 200 in the Davis-Bacon plan. You have audits now that have to occur, and so there's kind of a double dip on costs. How it's tested would be just like, and so I'll back up for a second. I'll tell you how we typically recommend them to be structured, and it's really one of two ways. If a company is comfortable with the idea of a safe harbor plan, we can use the fringe dollars in the plan, and they can double count as a safe harbor contribution on behalf of the company. Now, the specific rule around prevailing wage only is that the trade-off for the company is you can put the money into the plan on behalf of the employee, but it has to be immediately vested. So that's you can't put a vesting schedule on prevailing wage dollars. And so if you're comfortable with a safe harbor, you can actually utilize that prevailing wage dollar, save yourself on the payroll side, save yourself that 25 cents on every dollar, but also save yourself on potential safe harbor contributions to the plan, because now we can use $1 for two purposes, essentially. That helps with testing, obviously. We talked about, certain plan designs and plans getting top heavy. On the other side of it, alternatively, so this is not a plus, this is one or the other. Alternatively, you can, even though it's not technically not a voluntary contribution by the employee, you can categorize those as elective deferrals on behalf of the employee, which now will open up more contribution capacity for the folks that are more highly compensated or owners of the company. So I'm a proponent of having it all under one roof, because you can amend plan documents. You can be flexible with plan design year to year. That's really more of a tax planning conversation. If you run two parallel plans, I've found that it creates more complication. You also run the risk of additional costs and more confusion. So for example, like we've had companies that have, as a trade-off to their employees, they'll run a prevailing wage only plan, and they'll allow multiple loans on a plan on the prevailing wage dollars, but then on their traditional plan, they allow one loan, or they'll say like the loan is only eligible in a hardship scenario, and they'll create all these restrictions. And so now you're running two philosophies parallel to one another. And so you have one subset of employees that maybe work on those jobs and they're happy because they can get access, in blue collar industries like this is, access to money is can be a blessing or a curse. You have those employees that they love the idea, and then the employees that don't participate in that plan hate it because now they're restricted in what they can do. And so testing occurs just like any other plan would. How you categorize and how you account for each is dependent on your decision as an employer. Where we see the biggest issue is that they'll have, let's say, a plan at principal, for example, on their traditional 401k, safe harbor plan. Then they have a prevailing wage only plan with the contractor's plan, for example. And the two don't do a good job of communicating, and testing doesn't happen the way that it should. And it's not, ultimately, it's not on the record keepers or administrators to third-party administrators to quarterback that or to referee that. It's their job to do the testing, obviously, but if the company is not organized enough, which I'll tell you a lot of them aren't, you have all kinds of issues that that come up as a result of this. And so we see it a lot. We have a few plans that we've taken over in the middle of like they're on the DOL naughty list because things haven't happened the way they should. So really long-winded answer to your question, but I would say that for us, our focus was on how can we simplify the process, make one plan, include all the provisions that are necessary to make this strategy work, and then amend the plan as needed, which ultimately has a cost to it. That's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's a lot easier than being fined for, you know, lack of compliance due to, you know, or having large corrective distributions after several years have passed because someone didn't do their job right.
What types of companies are you primarily working with, like general contractors, or how do you target the ones that are only doing the government work that allows you to utilize the prevailing wage stuff?
Yeah, so it's a lot of subcontractors, you know, think skilled labor, electrical, plumbing, roofing. We have flagging companies is another one. We have a handful of those where, you know, think guys that stand on the side of the road and lay cones or turn stop signs, you know, the stop slow. All of that is state road work typically, so they're always going to be doing prevailing wage work. And I will tell you that a lot of these jobs pay very, very well, depending on the geography, obviously. But in this area, it's not uncommon that we see like $50-$60 an hour for a guy to turn a stop sign. Like it's pretty normal actually. So mostly subcontractors. There are a few general contractors that we'll work with, but they typically are large organizations. And in this area, we have, you know, Clark Construction, Whiting Turner, probably two of the largest general contractors in the United States based on just volume. We don't work with either of those companies. We focus on the subs because I feel like that's where we bring the most value. Our plan size on average is, I think, around like 3.5 million. But we have, you know, 150 plus participants in most of those plans. So our target is utilizing some of the industry associations that we belong to. So ABC is one of them. ASA, Subcontractors Association, which all have national and local chapters. And then we just position ourselves as an alternative option to some of these national companies. So Contractors Plan is one. The Census also owns a company called Beneco. That's another. Those are not choice platforms. They're not open architecture. They're typically a plug and play solution. So we position ourselves as we go to market. We help you fulfill your fiduciary capacity as a plan sponsor. And we spend a lot of time building the plan that makes sense for the organization that you've built as a subcontractor. So we work with a lot of different subcontractors, and there's so many that, you know, even for example, cleaning companies. We have a couple that clean job sites, and that's, you know, they still get paid the same schedule, the prevailing wage schedule for the type of job that it is. They get paid on the same schedule that an electrical contractor would. So you would be surprised. I think really it's, if you look at some of those local associations or the chapters, that'll give you access to a membership list that, you know, they're doing some form of that work, because almost every company, we have a 600 member chapter here in Baltimore for ABC. And I think every single one of those companies does some form of prevailing wage work throughout the year. It might be one or two jobs, and some it's all they do. So there's definitely a market there. That's what we found is relatively untapped for independent advisors like ourselves.
Yeah, for our insurance arms, obviously like construction companies and GCs, those are kind of the commercial insurance clients that they're targeting. So we've been involved in a couple different chapters and kind of going to see it. So like, what are kind of those questions that you're trying to, like, pique their interest or kind of talk to the different business owners about to kind of see, if it would be a good fit to have a longer conversation about it to see if we could set up something like that.
Yeah, so we typically will just ask a couple simple questions. One, are you doing any public sector work? Yes or no? If they are, and some of this is state specific too. If you're doing state level work, for example, some states have their own prevailing wage laws, and some don't. But specifically, I would ask, are you doing any public sector work? If they say yes, then the follow-up question to that is, what are you doing with the fringe dollars that are, a part of the hourly pay for those employees? Are you paying it in cash? Are you using it for fringe benefits? Are you contributing it to the plan? If they are paying it in cash, there's two paths you can kind of go down with that, or two angles, I should say. If they already have a plan set up and they're doing safe harbor, then the follow-up question I would say is, are you using those dollars to offset your safe harbor contribution as an employer? And if they look at you confused, then you know that they're probably not, or they're not aware if they are. And so that's a way to position yourself almost as an expert. And I will tell you, we've gotten really good at this, but I would say that we're still in a place where we're getting better and better at it. There are not very many advisors in the country that could speak intelligently on this stuff. And that's, yeah, some people might take offense to that if I said that in a room at Napa, but it's reality. I mean, the fact that we see a lot of these parallel plans out there is a testament to the fact that advisors are either scared of it or they just don't know anything about these strategies. We're working on an electrical contractor right now that has a $6 million 401k plan and then another $2.5 million prevailing wage plan. And they're running them separately, they're running them parallel to one another with two separate institutions. And so that advisor is ultimately, because of their either lack of knowledge or, lack of confidence, is leaving an additional $2.5 million on the table that they could bill on in some way. And so we're positioning ourselves to win an $8.5 million plan against a wirehouse advisor that a couple of years ago we probably wouldn't have competed on. So I think.
How are you seeing parallel plan? Do they file 500 as well?
Yep. Yeah, it's all. So it depends on who they're using as a provider too, in terms of who's officially listed as the plan sponsor and what the structure is, because some of these platforms have, for example, a MEP structure, and there are different situations. So it's not all uniform. Unfortunately, it's kind of piecemeal together, which makes it super confusing for the group to even figure out what exactly they're doing as time goes on and as they grow. But yeah, they run two plans. They run one plan where the plan document basically stipulates that it's only for prevailing wage dollars. It has its own special loan provision, its own vesting schedule. Everything is separate and specific to those dollars only. And then they run a completely separate plan that has a different adoption agreement that has a whole different set of rules. Now they have to be tested against each other, but some of the groups we've talked to in the past think that that's a cleaner way to do it, and it's not. I mean, if you have enough participants, you get into a sticky situation where you have a double audit cost is the biggest one we see, where that electrical contractor I was telling you about, their audit costs every year is 25 grand when it really should be 10 to 12. So that's not a value driving cost for them. That is just purely an unnecessary cost that should go away. And so combining the two plans together makes more sense to do that. Even if they had to, in theory, let's say they amend the plan document every year with the TPA, that's still going to be cheaper than paying an extra 12 grand. So, which we typically don't have to do. So it is a interesting, weird, quirky part of the market that we found ourselves in, and kind of stayed away from it for a while because I was under the impression that it was super complicated. But after educating ourselves on it and kind of seeing how some of the other folks out there were doing it, and by the way, some of those other national providers that I told you about, they're still operating on legacy annuity platforms and things that have surrender charges in order to terminate the plans. And it's not uncommon on those plans. We'll see a total all-in fee wrapper of like 3% on a couple $1 million plan. And they sell it on simplicity and kind of like it's all arm's length. You don't have to do everything. We do everything for you. But eventually, when employees get a big enough account balance, they start to notice how big that fee is. And so it can be more problematic. It causes more problems than it solves as time goes on. It seems like a really clean, simple way to do it when you start the plan, but as you grow as a company, it gets really sticky. So, and sometimes hard to unravel. So,
if you don't mind me asking, what are your fees are for these types of plans?
So we have two fee schedules that we'll run. One is an asset-based pricing model or a fixed fee schedule. Our typical fee on a plan under 5 million is somewhere in the 50 basis point down range. We make concessions based on flows too. Like if we have a plan that flows good contributions, we'll bring that down. But I think our average fee that we charge on all of our plans is like 35 basis points on the asset-based side. We charge a minimum startup fee of $5,000 for plans that have no money in them. And we're big on, we'll let the group choose how they want to be billed. We don't really care as long as we get paid an appropriate fee for the amount of work that we're doing. And so we have either asset-based billing, or we'll come up with a flat fee, almost with like a cost of living adjustment associated with it, where we'll roll that fee up periodically when we think it's appropriate to do so, either based on growth of headcount or growth of size of the plan.
Can I just ask quickly the group, and you guys might have chatted about this at a prior meeting. I'm just curious. Ryan, you had mentioned the startup minimum fee. That's something that we are always wrestling with, especially in this era of state mandates and more startup plans that I think any of us know what to do with. We just sort of bumped up our minimum to $3,500, which I felt like was a decent amount. I'm glad to hear that you're doing 5,000 and the market's supporting it. I think Maine's probably maybe a whisker more cost conscious than Baltimore. I'm just curious, maybe if everybody could go around in a quick circle and just, if your firm does a minimum for startups, if you do startups, and if so, kind of where that number is, if you feel comfortable disclosing.
I am also at 3,500. So I was happy to hear you say that. I've given an exception or two if I could tell it was a plan that was going to really grow quickly. But that's generally where I'm at as well.
I vary a little bit here and there, but I'll do 5 basis points and $1,200 a year. I just quote it as the $100 a month. And then typically, bump it up to 2,500. Every time I go above that, I usually get the nope, can't do it. So I haven't been able to charge more than $2,500, and that's, we're in California. Yeah, I'm in Northern California, but even for people out here, that's too expensive.
We basically kind of look at for the tax credit stuff that's going on how many eligible they would have and kind of base it off of that. We historically have done like a $2,000 one-time invoice, but we've quoted the last couple invoicing $4,000 a year for the first 3 years and then dropping off and then just doing 50 bips on it. And with the mandatory auto enroll, in theory, if a plan is over 25 people and they're eligible for the $4,000 and they auto enroll for three years, you're 50 bips on $300,000 or $400,000 or whatever. So it kind of makes it worth it on the back end too. So it doesn't feel like it's worthless work.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention too is I'll do a $500 implementation fee. So if that will include setting the plan up and doing an education meeting for the employees.
We'll also do a $2,500 startup fee as well. So now I feel like maybe we're charging too much. And at first I thought we were charging enough, but we haven't had as much pushback. And I guess the way we've looked at it is that if, I don't know, for what we provide, the $3,500 minimum, getting a dedicated advisor, RM, and education person, if someone's going to sort of balk at that, it kind of makes you question how committed they are to providing the plan. And as you can probably all attest, when you have that commitment, the plan runs awesome. And when you don't, it's like, no matter what you do, that client will never be happy. Okay. I appreciate you guys taking the time. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, we just have a 5,000 a year until they hit $1 million under management. Then we switch over to asset based. But truthfully, I throw the 5,000 out there, hoping that they bite on it. I'm very willing to come down, probably to that 3,000 range is my floor.
Yeah, that's similar to us how we do it.
Yeah, well, the interesting part about it is like, so we're, Baltimore, DC, Philadelphia, like all of those markets are pretty close. Like everything is in reasonable driving distance. But in that same geography, we were actually charging less too. And we have a good friend of ours that has been a big help in growing this part of our practice, who was a very successful, founded pretty large retirement planning firm here in the area. And he kind of was like, you need to charge more. And what we saw is that in our market, there are a lot of very large retirement plan advisors, like within a stone's throw of where we are. And they're charging, I mean, some of them have $20,000 minimum fees. Now they work in like the mega market, so it's different than what we're doing. But we've kind of packaged it as such to like with the financial wellness offering and some of the educational stuff we do is that we offer some additional third-party technology to each group as well. We've kind of packaged it as not just the plan cost, but also the cost of education, the cost of being present and being more involved in the plan. And I think, I don't know, truthfully, like it was hard for us to even get to that point of 5,000. Like it's still like cringe sometimes when we put those proposals out, but we're getting less and less pushback on it because we've gotten better at selling the value of and the time commitment that's involved with getting these plans off the ground. And especially if you're going into a group that has 150 employees already, which isn't uncommon for us in these construction businesses, they understand, the business typically understands like the value of an hour of manpower. And so you start to do the math on that and you're like 150 people times this, times that, times, how many hours you're going to spend on this plan to get it started and to get people educated on it. Like they get it at that point. It's an understandable cost, but the tax credits certainly help too. That has made it a lot easier to run those things up market. So, our philosophy is not much different than Luke's though. So we throw it out there as kind of like, this is what we're worth. And if someone doesn't feel that, then we'll come up with some kind of alternate solution, either bring that fee down or we'll do a combination of basis points and flat fee just to make sure that we get something on the front end. So that's kind of how we approach it. But
yeah, because I think targeting that $3,000 to $5,000 range, I mean, that's $600,000 to $1 million account on a startup that used to essentially be like a one-time kind of stroke of a check. So taking advantage of the tax credits is kind of how we've looked at it to a certain extent, to allow the plan sponsor to not necessarily have an uphill battle with spending $20,000 or something like that with some of those bigger institutional advisors, and basically saying like, this is kind of what the market is and our time isn't worthless. We'll service you obviously, and we have services that you could take advantage of that aren't everywhere. Obviously, like you can't go to like an Edward Jones or something like that to kind of get a startup solution that we kind of provide. So that's kind of how we pitch it.
Yeah, I think that's smart. That makes sense to me.
So guys, let's rotate topics a little bit. We got about 9 minutes left until noon, at least Eastern time. Would love to hear some thoughts on converting participants to wealth management clients. And I'll start. I'm blessed in that we were an RA first, and so I've got a whole team next door that I can do easy handoffs with. The three things I look at are, at least once a quarter, check in to see who's turning 59 and a half, and always keeping an eye out for in-service rollovers, above a certain threshold. Obviously, retirement look ahead. So a lot of times I'll send out just kind of an annual email to my HR directors and just ask for a list of who's retiring, and just, reach out to those folks and say, hey, we're here if you need us. And then the third is really targeting highly comped people in the office. And what I've found is that emails, once people get to that age, typically they either have an advisor or they're getting bombarded by people. And so the only thing that has been the delineator is time spent in person. So like when I go and do an in-office visit and I spend 4 hours in a conference room, I love the education component with all the participants, but really that's a strategic time for me to get face time with folks that are either, in service, rollover potential, or looking to retire in the next year.
Does anybody sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I've talked about this on a previous call. I think what our new advisor that started today is going to kind of target is trying to like pull a list of 55 and older to try to create that relationship beforehand, to have a little bit more hand holding and have it be a little bit more extended. So by the time they're 62, 63 and able to retire, they're kind of looking at them as their advisor because they've been meeting with them a little bit more intentionally than just saying that you should be saving 10% and investing in a target date fund. Because I mean, in our market, a lot of the people that we work with are manufacturing folks, so they're not as intentional as they should be with trying to find an advisor. And that's kind of why we hired this next person, because we would have multiple people a month kind of look at us as their advisor. And we're similar to Mason, where we've only done 401k plans. We're like, it would be a disservice if we were your advisor, to be honest. We'd throw you in a target date fund and charge you a percent. That's exactly what you've basically been doing in terms of financial planning. We wouldn't be able to do anything. So that's kind of how we're viewing growing it. So I'd like to hear some of the other guys that already have it established, if that's on pace or whatever we could think about to do a little bit differently.
Something that we did recently that implemented earlier this year is there's an app out there called Elements. And part of our financial wellness offering, we give all the participants able to download the app. So when they download the app and do the onboarding, we're able to see their income, spouse's income, outside assets, and everything. So it's been we're just kind of getting started. I just had a good meeting this past Friday with somebody who downloaded the app and reached out. And you actually you can message in the app as well, but you can kind of see more into some of these participants' lives and see who you should kind of reach out to. And if they're engaged in the app, they're probably looking for help as well. So it's something that we're trying to grow. But definitely curious what you guys are all doing, because we're hoping to see success in there after the investment we made in it.
We've always been fairly hesitant to sort of, I hate to use because it sounds so dirty, but to use our role as the retirement plan advisor to really actively target some of these highly compensated employees, even though they often do need our help. So we've tried to come up with ways that are more of like an opt-in approach. So probably very similar to what you're just describing, Devin. So we've partnered with a company called Venrollment. You guys might have heard of.
Yeah, we use them. They're awesome.
For us to provide both financial wellness, but also for us to sort of put some of our other resources on there, so people just keep it front of mind. Oh, I didn't realize they do life insurance. Oh, I didn't realize they do financial planning. And we feel really strongly that there's going to get to a point where you're not going to see the velocity of IRA rollovers like you see nowadays, just with where all the regulation is heading, all the Reg BI around rollovers, now lifetime income. You're just going to see assets pretty much stay in the retirement plan. And so we feel strongly that having a strong financial planning team that can provide sort of that consulting without being an asset gather model, in our opinion, is going to be the right model going forward. Now, whether that happens in 5 years or 50 years, who knows? We'll see how aggressive they are with some of the legislation and enforcement of some of these things. But that's kind of how we've been targeting, is let's just provide them the environment to sort of self-study. And then if that leads to an opportunity, that's great, as opposed to us sort of engaging them actively. And then also let's beef up our financial planning so we're ready if and when those assets are going to stay in the retirement plan for us to still be able to monetize and provide additional value for those retirees without having to take their money out of the plan.
Nate, how are you using Venrollments? We started using Venrollment earlier this year and we love it, but I'm curious how you're using that with your plans.
Sorry, I feel like a boomer on my phone here. We just started like 2 months ago. So TBD. We're obviously partnering with certain record keepers where we can, who provide it as part of their service. So Vanguard has a corporate partnership with them. We are leveraging both the existing videos that they sort of create, particularly for our more, I guess, financially illiterate clients that really can benefit from those like 2-3 minute snippets, and then we're just uploading a lot of our, so we do like a monthly financial wellness webinar, a monthly financial wellness newsletter. So we upload those resources, and then we have like hot links to some of the other services we provide with like a really quick kind of one pager. Here's the type of questions that this service are designed to help answer. Here's how our approach, you know how it is. So that's how we've done it so far, but we'll see. The jury's still out on it.
Awesome.
We haven't chance where we've had enough activity where we're getting any sort of measurable sort of here's where people are clicking and looking at, but hopefully something I can keep you up to date on
Awesome.
Are you,
Appreciate it.
are you guys rolling that out to like only like a specific price point and plans? Because we know we looked at it too, and we didn't really make the investment in it just yet, but we're still kind of thinking about it. Where it's like this is available for only plans that are above 5 million or something like that. Because you can buy like a book of like 10, 25, or 50 or something like that. And it's a pretty significant investment, obviously. So kind of what you guys are utilizing it and only offering it to a certain or what.
Yeah, we're an RPEG shop, and there is some institutional pricing through our RPEG, which helps. We started with like the bottom two, I think it was like 50 up to 50 plans. So we're kind of going to use that as like a beta test. And if we feel like it leads to enough additional service lines to cover the expense, probably just kind of eat it on our end and then just rely on some of the additional referral opportunities to help pay that back, as opposed to passing that fee on to employers. Plus, I think it's just another value add in the sales cycle to say, hey, we can create like a 401k intranet where you can put all your resources, blah, blah, blah. We find that HR folks really enjoy that.
So I'm
And it's
on, I just got a free trial yesterday of enrollment and just set up my first plan this morning. I'm excited about it. I'm actually also an RPAG advisor. My plan is to actually dump WellSense, their financial wellness tool that I think has been okay. The website itself is very ugly. And so, I haven't seen a ton of, I've seen some success there, but I think it's not an apples to apples comparison, obviously. It's not a financial wellness tool, but my plan is to kind of roll out the enrollment, dump WellSense, kind of offset some of the cost increase there, and then kind of get the HR people, like you said, at some of our larger plans to get excited about it and roll it out to employees. And I think kind of rollover opportunities plus just additional client introductions, additional employee introductions is going to pay for that increase in cost of enrollment.
And that's like 50 plans, correct? Not like 50 creation of videos.
Correct. Yep.
You upload
Videos, they are created automatically. You just have to plug in like the plan provisions, and they create these like pretty slick 2-3 minute like illustration videos, the ones that all the big record keepers have that none of us could ever invest the money in, maybe Hub, but not the rest of us poor people. So it works really well. You can convert them to Spanish as well. So for anybody who's working on, I'm thinking of you, Ryan and Devin, if you're doing a lot of, I hate to stereotype, but my guess is some of those folks are Spanish speaking. So that's been really powerful. We have a lot of French speakers up here in Maine, so they have subtitles for every single one of them, and they're very digestible. Plus, I feel like half of our employee questions are, who do I contact for what? And that just like gets them to be able to help themselves, or even just a small chunk, which saves so much time and almost pays for itself just with that.
I wonder if it makes sense to go to Venrollman and see if they can give some kind of discount for the group. Say, hey, with this group of young advisors, and would you give us a discount for the group? I might reach out to them. If you guys, if that's interested, I wonder if they do something like that.
Yeah.
How many of you guys are part of RPAG? I know a couple of you guys said you are, but how many are RPAG members?
I think the guys that I brought in are all RPAG guys. We're an RPAG firm as well, because I relied on Geo, but trying to get Luke to pull the trigger on it. We talked about it a little bit in Napa, but Devin and Ryan, if you guys are trying to stay more focused, I know you guys have the niche with the prevailing wage stuff, but it saves so much time for us. We'd be lost without it. So we love RPAG.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's almost a necessity if you are like a 401k shop to have it. Just with all the tools, and I mean, even the collective investment trust that they have. CIT, those are huge. Just was curious because, if you're talking about a discount for the group, it could be a certain group through RPAG type of thing that might help, right? I don't know.
So that compared to FI 360, do you guys like that better than FI?
The only thing I really liked on FI 360, they have a really good benchmarking tool. It lays it out very, very well. Where the benchmarking tool on RPAG is pretty generic, not very good to the eye.
The plan,
What's that?
the plan fees report, like the Prism plan.
Yeah, the Prism. Yeah.
It's like one page is good, the rest kind of suck.
Yeah, so like when I use the Prism, I use literally like 2 pages of it, and it's not very good. Whereas like the FI 360 one, like you get a really, really good data points there where you can kind of point it out, like all the way down to this is how many advisors are doing certain amount of visits, right? And this is how much each visit costs, or you can really break it down. Where RPAGs, I don't really use it all.
Yeah, for context, I use FI right now, hopefully with some more plans on the books. RPAG is in the future, but that fee benchmarker tool is about $1,000 a year.
Got it.
So I mean, if that's something you wanted to add on, it's not insanely expensive, but you're doubling up on tools for sure.
Yeah, we subscribe to the FI 360 advisor benchmarking report for exactly the reasons you guys just mentioned.
Can one of you guys send in like a sample report? I've never seen it.
Sure.
Sweet, thanks.
All right, guys, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for jumping in and contributing. I'm going to send out the recording. Couple thoughts on next meeting. I've got a few ideas, but I want y'all to just throw stuff out real quick if you got anything you want to talk about. The things we haven't discussed yet are prospecting approaches, so cold prospecting, and then obviously you've got your referral sources, your community groups. 2 would be approaches to financial wellness and education, which we touched on today, but I'm curious to hear more about, like, what does an in-person meeting look like? What are people putting in their newsletters, stuff like that. And then 3 would just be service models and process. And for you RPAG guys, it's probably going to sound pretty similar because it's structured. But I think it'd be good for the group to talk through that. Just what does it look like from onboarding to 5 years down the road, as far as cadences of interaction, investment reporting, stuff like that. Do any of those hit you guys, specifically, or is there anything else that y'all want to discuss?
With the new year, I'd be an advocate for prospecting.
Yeah, I think prospecting, then and maybe after that financial wellness, but I think prospecting would be great.
Yeah, we'll have movement in Q4.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's do that. Let's lock in prospecting. We'll just come to the table with kind of your approaches, the different fingers, I guess, of the hand, and how it's worked for you and what you want to get into more. So we'll plan on that.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
We got-
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you guys
Thank
for your time. Thank you.
Have a good one.